because awakening is something that you open your eyes to everything new and everything old gets burned away.
Welcome back to the Avoiding Average podcast, everyone. I'm Susan Gates, an astrologer and transformational soul coach, and this is where we explore the extraordinary journeys of people who've stepped off the beaten path and embraced the unknown. Now, in today's episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Candace Evelenko. She's a spiritual guide, a mystic, and the founder of The Fire Unleashed, which is a movement igniting sovereign awakening in a world built on illusion. After a profound spiritual transformation unraveled her former life, she stepped into her calling to help others deprogram from fear, reclaim their inner authority, and rise into the truth of who they are. With roots in holistic health, a background in healing, and a gift for decoding the unseen, Candace speaks directly to those who know they were born for more than what the world told them they could be. She and I share very similar visions for the future, and so I'm excited to share her story and her particular philosophy for her movement, The Fire Unleashed. Now let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to the Avoiding Average podcast. Today I have Candace Evelenko, and she is the founder of The Fire Unleashed. And I'm super excited to talk to her because she's become a really good friend of mine, and love talking spirituality with her, and she's got a lot of knowledge to share as well. And so I'm excited to have you on. So thank you, Candace, for being here.
Thank you so much for that amazing welcome, and thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Candace, I know we've been working together in the coaching world. So we coach each other. And I know that you were previously a nurse before going into this field. So I'd love for you to give a little bit of a background on how you ended up switching from nursing to coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a little bit of background on that is that, yeah, I tried to go the traditional route, right? I knew that I was meant to be a healer of some sort, right? And I was a wounded healer, though. And there was a lot of work that I needed to do on myself before I could actually help others and really hold space for them, to walk their own journeys and kind of give guidance and things like that. And so I kind of went the traditional route of like, how do I get a job that's with benefits and all of the things while helping people, right? So I went that route, and I really did enjoy nursing. However, right in like when 2020 happened, it coincided, and honestly, it sparked a spiritual awakening for me. And in this spiritual awakening, it was no like small thing. Now, like I had always kind of been spiritual. I was raised in a very religious house, and um, I had always felt drawn to like mysticism and things like that, but it was always off limits for the way that I was taught. I was taught that if I messed with that, it was going to land me in hot burning coals in hell.
Sure,
And
demonized.
right, it was very demonized, and so I spent most of my life just kind of staying away, if not just barely dipping a toe in here or there, and then scaring myself a little. And so when 2020 came, I had this completely new experience around spirituality, and it kind of knocked me off my feet in such a way that I basically saw behind the veil, right? And for anyone who's ever had something like this happen where they see things in such a drastic new way, it can be absolutely terrifying, right? And so I thought that I was losing my mind. And so I didn't know what to do. I was a nurse, and I had just been promoted to a floor manager
Nice.
very quickly. But with everything that had happened, like in the world and then within me, and that it all kind of converged and coincided at this time, I was so scared that I didn't trust anything anymore. I didn't trust the world as I knew it. I didn't trust others, I didn't trust people, and I didn't trust myself to know who or what was safe to trust anymore or what
Mhm.
was even real, right? And so out of just sheer fear, I decided I'm going to sit down right here and I am going to take a break and try to figure out which way is up and which way is down, right? And
Mm.
so my husband at the time was making a decent living and I was able to just step back. So I quit my job. I stepped away from society. I stepped away from friendships. I stepped away from absolutely everything. And there was no direction or path that I was set to follow. It wasn't like, oh, I'm done being a nurse. It was, maybe I'll come back to this when I
Mhm.
figure all of this out. But right now, I need to find myself. So I went on this sabbatical, which is inevitably what led me to creating the Fire Unleashed. Everything had fallen away during that time. It was kind of like the reason that I call it the fire is because awakening, like a real awakening is something that like you open your eyes to everything new and everything old gets burned away whether you
Mm.
like it or not. And so to me that is what the fire is. And it took me 4 years to come out of isolation, 4 years to really go through this intensive process of questioning everything, questioning religion, questioning society, questioning what I believed. Do I
Mhm.
actually believe this or this or this? And when the answers kept coming up, no, and everything was burnt off, I was left with nothing but ground to
Yeah.
rebuild on. And I had to rebuild my self, my identity, everything from scratch. And so, with that and the knowledge that I have now that others are awakening too, and how terrifying that can be, I took it upon myself to go ahead and pick up that torch and hold it and say, "Hey guys, it's okay. You're not crazy. Um, like this is where we're going, and there's
Yeah.
a better tomorrow waiting on the other side of what feels like everything burning down."
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. Um, a I feel like when 2020 hit, there was just a lot going on in the world and a lot that people had to kind of come to terms with, a lot of alone time that people weren't necessarily used to. And I think that that sparked a lot um, for a lot of people, I guess, that spiritual awakening in a sense. And so you had mentioned seeing behind the veil. And I would love for you to dive into that a little bit more. Like, what did that actually look like for you?
it's such a complex question to
Yeah.
answer. So let me think and then let me try.
Okay. Totally fair.
Right? Okay. Let's see. Where do I start? Okay. So everything had kind of been leading up to this moment, right? I actually had, I guess you could say, deprogrammed a little bit. I had stepped away from the religion that I had been really rooted in, right? And that was prior to 2020. And I had kind of dabbled in, I guess you'd call it witchcraft.
Okay.
Just kind of like rituals and spell work and just trying to like figure out how I can influence my life to go in a certain direction, right? Like with spells and things like that, like things that maybe had sparked in me as a child that as an adult I was like, oh, those are cute things. And then like something kind of reawakened in me in 2019. And I actually had this experience where the goddess Hecate came to me. I didn't seek her out. I was taking a nap and I woke up to just Hecate, 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 just
Mm.
like going off in my head. And I had to Google it. I'm like, what is a Hecate? You know? And I did. And so it's kind of like I started to work with this goddess, this deity, right? And that was honestly what kind of set things in motion.
Okay.
Like when people talk about her, she's very transformative. She is the guide through the underworld. It is my firm belief that the underworld is actually our subconscious,
Mm.
right? And that's
Mhm.
where all of the junk hides out and where shadow work comes in. And we start clearing that out, right? In order to go through the underworld, we have to kind of move the cobwebs out of the way to reach the surface, right? And she's kind of that guide. So I started a relationship with this deity, and moved through everything. And it was like I was guided up to this point. So I was doing these new kind of practices that were outside of the practices that I had of just simple like prayer and things like that. Like I started to learn about tarot, and I started, delving into different forms of divination and, channeling and things like that, which were totally foreign to me. I come from a family that is gifted in sight and in, communicating with the divine, but a lot of
Mhm.
them push
Shut
that
it down.
down.
Yeah.
I like my grandmother. She had had one experience where she went to this meditation retreat and they were meditating, and she had this vision of a friend that she hadn't talked to in a while, their gravestone with their name on it. And she went to go track this person down after this experience, only to find that the woman had died,
Mm.
like only like 2 weeks before or something, right? So she had psychically um, known that this happened. Um, and it scared her so badly that she renounced her gifts and she never used them again. And she was like, "Oh, no." Um, and so, and there were other, stories like that in my family where either people scared themselves, but as I was delving into these things, I had interesting experiences. And when I was working full time in the hospital in COVID, and we were a COVID unit, and I just, I couldn't do it. Like we were separating people from each other. They were never going to see each other again. I couldn't do it. So I went to a nursing home, very part time. It's called PRN, where you only work when they need people and you only have to work like 1 or 2 days a month, right? So I'm working like very little over here, and I'm given this opportunity to come and work at this advertising company, which I know it's completely different, but I had found this like fire for it, with my husband's business. He was a realtor. And I was like, yeah, I mean, if I'm going to get the opportunity, let me just take that on fully. Right. And really weird stuff started to go down, right? Not just COVID and everything in the world, but within this company and my experience in it, right? And I started having these dreams, and I was having this experience, and it was 3D. It was all like everything that was happening other than the dreams, obviously, was in the 3D, right? Um, and I uncovered corruption, and it scared me very much because when I did, I was actually threatened,
Mm.
by the people in this company, right? And I was like, what is going on? Right?
Yeah.
But it was a series of kind of like psychic downloads that kind of helped me to uncover this stuff, and then putting the 3D pieces together, and then talking to this person in the company, and then them turning and like threatening me. And I'm like, okay, I have touched a nerve, I've touched something like
Mhm.
that I was not supposed to touch, right? And I had been brought into this company by a friend, and this is kind of where the breakdown of like, what can I even trust? Hit, because and then you had all of the stuff going on in the world, and everything just kind of, I'd always seen the world as kind of like off kilter, but now it seemed like everything that I knew about the world just caved in beneath my feet, right? And I was just falling, and there was nothing solid to grab onto. And so when I say like I saw behind the veil, it was still a very 3D experience.
Mhm.
But at the time, I wouldn't have called it a spiritual awakening. I wouldn't have said, "Oh, I'm seeing behind the veil,"
Mhm.
right? It was through study and research and really tapping in to the divine and my relationship with, who I call source,
Mhm.
or the universe or whatever, like the source of people, once I would have called it God and maybe I still do, but
Mhm.
it's so much harder to define that. God just doesn't fit in a box for me. And so building this relationship and asking so many questions, like I said, questioning, do I believe this over here? Do I believe that over there? It wasn't until hindsight that I was able to look back and say, that was a spiritual experience, not just a 3D experience. That was actually the start of my awakening. And the reason that it was so scary and I couldn't make total sense of it in the 3D world was because it just wasn't fully 3D. Parts of it were energetic, parts of it were, you know, spiritual. And I'm a big believer in truth being in the nuance and the gray areas, and sometimes being very hard to put into words.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand that. I think that's fair. I think there is always that gray area that ends up becoming really difficult to kind of wade through in a sense. And our brains do not like gray area. They like the black and white, the easy to understand, just segment it out. And I think like, when you're going through that experience, it's very much a gray area. It's something that you've never experienced before, or something that you don't really understand. So thank you for sharing that story. I think that gives a little bit more context because a lot of people who go through, their spiritual awakenings, it doesn't look like a spiritual awakening or what people might think is a spiritual awakening. It is often something really uncomfortable, really sticky, really just, I don't know what is going on. And it's going to look different for everyone too. So for you, basically going through this experience and then coming out of it, you went into what I would say is like hermit mode after that, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. I had my family. That's it. Everybody get in this bubble. Hang on.
What was like some of the main things that came out of that time? I know that's going to be really hard to condense down because it was a long period, but like what are some, like, if you had to pick like three things, what would you say were the main things that came out of that for you?
So I had always been a massive seeker, right? Nothing ever fully resonated for me, I guess is the right word. And so through that time, I started off just like, why is this happening? And like reaching out to God, and like I would, honestly, like I'll say this. I thought that the apocalypse was happening, like the legitimate one that's written about in the book of Revelation that I had been grown up in, and that's what I thought was happening. And so I was absolutely terrified, right? And I'm asking God, like, what is going on? Like, what do I do? Like, is this the end? Like, you know, how am I supposed to show up for my kids and, for whatever? And so it was just all of these questions and questions and questions and questions up until the point where something just snapped, right? And I let go of all the questions. And what came with that was, it was like emptying out a hoarder's room that was filled with all of this stuff, right? And just emptying it out. And that made room for me to then collect what I really wanted in that room. And so I was able to collect my truth. And I was able to stop trying so hard to fit into a mold, to
Mhm.
try to, pick a belief system or, be something. This experience broke me down so much, that I lost my identities. And I realized in the process of that, that none of those identities were real to begin with.
Mm.
And so it was like, emptying out this room and being able to then curate what I want in the room and making it beautiful. But the room was me, right?
Mm.
And so I found a more authentic me, I found truth and resonance. And I was able to, I guess what you would say is, for the first time, I returned to me. The gift, it was me, you know? And so one thing and all the things that make that up, was that. And then I was able to find hope for tomorrow. I was able to drop all of the fears and the programmed beliefs, that this was the apocalypse. And I truly believe this absolutely is the apocalypse, but that just means the unveiling, right?
Yeah.
There's no massive destruction and hail fire raining down, like sometimes it feels like that.
I was about to say
Felt like
internally,
it
maybe.
then, you know? Um, but yeah, and so yeah, if there were three things that I got: me, my truth, hope for where we're going, and then my purpose, which is so it's I had always been searching for my purpose. Like I said at the beginning, I was very much a wounded healer, and I thought that I could find healing and purpose through healing others, right? And that would make me enough, right? But in emptying everything out that I thought was going to make me enough, I found that I just already was, right? And I learned embodiment. Um, and so, yeah, like I do absolutely get my purpose from helping others, but I couldn't help them the way that I will if I didn't have those experiences um, behind me. So,
That's beautiful. I think that's it's so simple, but also not.
mhm.
I think that's the funny thing about spirituality in general is that if you're looking at it at face value, it does look very simple, but there's so much more underneath that you kind of have to go through to get to that point. And so I'm really happy that that's what you found throughout that experience because I know that it probably was not very easy to do that. Um, and I know that a lot of people kind of go into the spiritual world because they feel like they have a lack of purpose. And I love that you had kind of highlighted that, part of like your purpose isn't really something that's outside of you. It really is you in
Yeah.
a sense, right? Like
Yep. 100%.
um and yeah, so man, where do we even take that from there? Like I feel like that's just such a like a profound part of it. Um, and so I guess when you had decided to start, the Fire Unleashed, what is what was the main driver there? Like I know that you had this part of you that wanted to help others and heal others. But yeah, I mean, I would love for you to talk about that a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah. So let's see. This was its own awakening or separate from that other awakening,
Yeah.
right? This was like awakening to mission. And that's what I would call it, is that I told you that I had been searching out my psychic gifts and things like that, right? And exploring tarot and things like that. Well, back in 2023 at the very end, right? This is when I wasn't quite out of hermit mode yet. Um, and I started seeing eagles everywhere. Now, like I had never really seen eagles in my entire life. I actually remember being a kid and driving through the mountains of Colorado with my parents, praying, God, let me see an eagle. I want to see an eagle. Right. And I never ever. Right. And like, okay, so I live on the East Coast in like Virginia
Have
Beach.
them here, yeah.
Okay. It's a city. Right. And it's surrounded, like we have like the Dismal Swamp and stuff. Like it's not all city, but I was in the city. And I just started seeing eagles. Like I'm not even kidding, like every single week, sometimes three times a week. Okay. And like this became like, okay, this is some sort of communication, right? And I started to delve deeper into things and try to like figure out. And I had all of this like old junk come up that I needed to heal, right? And it was like spirit was just saying like, okay, we have some things to do. We're gonna do them now. Okay. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Right. And so I started to delve very like much harder, like daily tarot readings, right? Trying to like get to like I need to figure out like what's going on. Something's going on inside of me. I'm getting signs and synchronicities all over the place. Like I got to figure this out, right? And so one day I was doing a reading like for myself, and I get this message come through that says in 2025 you are going to start a spiritual career. And I'm like, hmm, what do you mean? What is it? What are we doing? And they didn't tell me, right? That was it. They were just like, that's all you need to know for now, right? And so it
Teaser.
seeded something. Yeah, it seeded something in me that was like, okay. And I told you, like, I wasn't quite out of the hermit mode. And so like, little things really started to push me out of hermit mode and pushing me back into society. And I was healing things, and I quit vaping. Like I was told you need to stop like all the rest of your addictions, right? Like, and I'm like, God bless it. And so I'm still kind of seeking, and I go for a coaching certification. I'm like, well, you know what? I want to help people. I don't think I'm going back to nursing in the mainstream hospitals or anything like that. Let me go, just look at some other things. And coaching really seemed to resonate with me. And so I joined this coaching course, and this was a massive catalyst for my growth and just shedding old layers and thought processes and working through things and getting to know myself on a deeper level. And it's how I met you. And and at this point, I'm just kind of like, all right, I'm gonna have like a little coaching business, like nothing too big, nothing too crazy, right? I'm gonna help people. That's it. And come the end of 2024 into 2025, where we are now, I had a new like series of big experiences, and I had what I would call an activation. Okay. Where it was very much so just like I had been pulled back in a slingshot, and now I was let go. Right. And like all of these downloads started coming in. And the only way that I know how to explain this is suddenly things that didn't make sense before about my life, about things that I had learned, just started to make sense. And it was almost like, in the movies, how you'll have somebody with a big old cork board, and they'll have the little pins and then
Mhm.
like string wrapped around them,
Yeah.
leading over here and over here and over here. And it's like, this is how this connects to that. And this is how this connects to that. Right. And it was very much like an experience like that. Everything just kind of like came in, and like puzzle pieces that were
Mm.
scattered all over the place, like connected together and made this big picture, right? And suddenly I knew what I was supposed to do, and that I had this purpose. But this purpose was on the other side of one of my biggest fears,
Which was?
right? And I had been working through it in coaching, but I had not gotten over it. And it was being seen and using my voice and saying the things that everyone might not like, and being disliked or being attacked. Social media can be really brutal. And basically, it was I am meant to teach and like activate and talk about awakening and like be pretty prolific. And prolific is like over here. So you got like your mainstream, then you got your all the way crazy. And then right there in the middle, you got your prolific, right? And so I was definitely going to be saying some things that people might not like, especially people who were still in their programming,
Mhm.
be that religious or whatever. And like my own mother, like I knew if she ever sees my videos, she'll be like, you're the Antichrist's daughter.
Mm.
Like, right. And so like all of this. had to be worked through. But I will say this. So I kind of delved into, over the past like year and a half, into numerology, a little bit into astrology, which
Mhm.
is your wheelhouse, and then human design, right? And I started delving really deep into those three things. And I kind of like made almost like a profile of myself. And I'd always believed this, right? But believe and embodiment are two totally different things when we live it versus know it. And I really, that became super real to me, right? And I looked and I'm a life path one, which is someone who leads and they
Mhm.
go first and they pioneer, right? I am a manifester in human design, which is somebody who they don't need any kind of permission. They don't need a cue or anything. They can just start something. And a lot of times these are your movement builders and your fire starters. And then my astrology, like all of them said the same thing in slightly different ways, and they added context and things like that into the big picture, right? And so for the first time it became extremely real to me that I actually didn't have to play small, right? And that my voice did matter because I spent a very long time staying in the corner, being silent, always trying not to rock the boat, play your cards right, make people like you. And you know what? People still never liked me. And now I know that a lot of that had to do with my energy and the purpose that I was meant to have in this life.
Mhm.
And I was never meant to fit the mold, and I'm a threat to the mold, and people can sense that, we really are like animals when it comes to our intuition, and so when somebody doesn't fit, you're like, oh, I'm round and I fit in this round hole, and that's square and it doesn't fit in this round hole, right?
Mhm.
And so I always felt like the odd one out, and it was in realizing that I was never meant to fit into the mold because I wasn't made for the paradigm that we haven't talked about this now in this podcast, but I was not meant for the paradigm that we're coming out of. I was
Mhm.
meant for the new one that we're
Mhm.
actually entering now, right? And I had to go
Mhm.
through all this junk and I had to sift through all of this stuff and I had to become the person who could lead into this new paradigm. But ultimately, I had just kind of this epiphany, and it all just kind of fell in together and was like, here's what you're meant to do. Go do it. And suddenly, like where I used to think, oh my gosh, I don't know what I would talk about. I don't think I could make enough content on that subject. I can't keep up with my own flipping ideas. Like, it's just like boom, 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 and that's how I know. That is
Yeah.
how I know that this is right. This is
Yeah.
it. This is like it's like I found a well spring that just keeps giving and keeps me excited. Um,
Yeah. That's amazing. I know I've heard this story a couple times now, just from talking with you over the last few months. But like, it's still exciting to hear, like from your perspective of going through everything that you've gone through, which I know that we haven't even touched the half of it.
right?
When I tell you Candace has been through some shit, she's been through some shit. Yeah, so it's like having this initial awakening and then going into the awakening of your mission, which I love how you stated that, because I think that it does kind of come in phases, right? Like you first have to awaken to who you truly are, and then you can step into who you're meant to be. And using all these resources, I mean, I love astrology, but I also do, like, I do love and respect, numerology and human design and gene keys and all those different things out there, because I think it all just kind of points us back to ourselves in a sense and helps us realign, because we spent our entire lives being told what we should be. Now we can kind of come back to ourselves and what we actually chose and what we actually want to do. And those in my mind are almost like permission slips, in a sense, not that we need it, but like it helps. And the more that we can step into that, the better off we are.
Yeah,
um
absolutely.
and Yeah, for any of my other astrology nerds out there, she's a Sagittarius rising, right? So very, very fitting with everything that you're doing. So, um, yeah. So I guess with you know your the movement that you're working toward and really helping others do the same thing where they come back into themselves. What is your grand vision for the future?
What a great question. Thank you for asking that. So, so basically, the way that I see it is that we have been in the age of Pisces and we are moving into the age of Aquarius. And okay, so the way that I've understood it, right, is that we go through the ages, we actually go through the ages backwards, right? And so we had the age of Aries, which was the age of the ram. And that's where, we kind of had like our control and like our warriors and stuff like that, right? Then we went into the age of Pisces where we had Jesus, who was the fisher of men and who, everything was very much like that was the last sacrifice. And then Jesus said to follow the man with the water pitcher into the house that he goes, right? And so that's the age of Aquarius. And so everything typically
Interesting.
goes clockwise, but for the ages, I understand it to go counterclockwise.
Interesting.
I may just be speaking a foreign language for most, but you have the myth of Mithras, where he slays the bull, right? And you have that also in the Bible, which is what I'm most familiar with my upbringing, where I believe it's Moses, who has them, he gets rid of the golden calf, right? And that's our age of Taurus. And then they move into the ram and they do all of the sacrifices. They sacrifice the goats and the rams, right? And then the last sacrifice is Jesus, and he brings in the age of Pisces. And the sign of, Christianity is the ichthys, which is the fish. He fed the crowds with 2 fish and 5 loaves. He called his followers the fishers of men. And then he said, follow the man with the water pitcher into the house that he goes. And that is Aquarius, right?
Interesting.
And it's
Yeah.
very coded.
But that explained that way, but that's interesting. So
Yeah. We'll have to talk more about this later.
I know, right? We'll deep dive on that later. But anyway,
Yeah.
go on.
Okay. So we've been in the Kali Yuga. And if you're familiar with Hinduism and Buddhism, they have 4 yugas, 4 ages. And so the Kali was the dark age of the cycle. And then you go up into the Dwapara Yuga, which is the bronze age. And then you go into the Treta, I think, which is silver. And then the Satya, which is gold. And so with that, you've got these cycles of consciousness. And we've been in this dark age where our consciousness has really kind of dipped into everything's been hidden, right? The meanings of the religious texts and holy texts have been hidden. They burned all the books back a couple thousand years ago. Like, they've been tearing down the statues and the history, like the ancient ones. I don't just mean stuff that happened in the US with 2020 and riots and stuff like that. I mean, like, erasing history. And so we've really lost ourselves. We've lost touch with the fact that we were in fact source experiencing itself, and we worshiped gods outside of ourselves. And not that we're supposed to worship ourselves. I don't want anybody to think that that's what I'm saying. It's more nuanced than that. Uh, um, so at this point, we are exiting the Kali Yuga and the Dark Age, and we're exiting the age that we were in and entering the age of Aquarius, and we're entering the Dwapara Yuga. And so the sun has been, on the other side of the world. Now the sun is starting to rise, and with that, our consciousness is rising. But I see us moving into a more honest and empowered, sovereign age where we are no longer bound by the things that bound us in the old age. And that's traumas and woundings, right? We're able now to heal. We're able to see what was illusion and what actual truth is. And we're moving into that phase. So where everything right now in the world may look chaotic and crazy and nobody can agree on anything. And, it just, looks like chaos, it is always darkest before the dawn. But the dawn is here, it's coming, and we are the ones who get to bring it. And so as people start to awaken as like little nodes on the planet, we start to anchor the light, right? And we all start waking up to this new idea, but it's not new. That's the thing about the new age is
Ancient.
is that it's ancient. We're actually having our knowledge returned to us. We're having the ancient ways returned to us. And that's why so many are going back to more natural and holistic ways of, be it medicine, herbalism, people having gardens and living off the land and getting chickens in their backyards. And we are realizing that our ancestors weren't just cave people, they actually had ancient wisdom, and we are starting to embody that. And so I see a beautiful path ahead of us. But in order for us to actually be what we were meant to be and live in the light, we have to shed the darkness. And that requires a little bit of burning. And so you've got the fire that everybody's kind of waking up to and being like, oh shit, the house is on fire. I'm on fire. What do I do? Let it burn. Let it flipping burn, because what comes out of that fire is a phoenix. And we're all headed in that direction, that's a different story. Maybe we're not all headed in that direction, but those of us who chose to, bring in the new age and to go live in that new age will be.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because I think everyone who is on this similar path of helping others in this transformation, we'll call it, I feel like there's a common theme of just this vision for the future that is brighter, healthier, just more authentic, really. And I truly believe that like everybody who was born in this, Pluto and Scorpio set generation is part of that too, where, we are dealing with all that the shit from our childhood and the stuff that we've been through in order to help better understand, okay, who are we really? Who are we really going to be in this lifetime as opposed to who we were told to be? Um, and it's funny that you mentioned the Phoenix because I like right before getting on this call, I was updating the artwork for this podcast and it has a little Phoenix in there now. So, I mean, a lot of the stories that we've been sharing here, like from you and from other people who I've had on the podcast, is just this. It truly is a transformation, right? Like you go through this Phoenix moment in your life where you're coming out to be who you really are, and that's how you avoid average, right? And so, I love that you mentioned that, and I'm excited for more people to have that Phoenix moment. Not
Yes.
necessarily the part before that because that kind of sucks, but
You know what though? Like, it does suck, but I wouldn't have it any other way. And I feel
yeah,
like
I
those who
agree.
end up on the other side, it is so important for them to say, I wouldn't have had it any other way too, because those who are in it are like, I feel like I'm dying. And how could I ever get on the other side of this? And if I got on the other side of it, how would I look back and be like, oh, yeah, all of that was worth it? Or at least I
Hmm.
want to say that, right?
Hmm.
And like the more people that we have that can say that, who
Hmm.
got to the other side and can look back to the others and say, guess what? You're going to have a life beyond your dreams. You just have to get through this part just a little bit longer. Like it's so important that we do be able to say, I wouldn't have had it any other
Yeah, I agree. I agree, and I joke a lot about the the it sucks
way. Oh,
part,
it's hell. Yeah, it's
but it
awful.
100% is worth it. And I know I'm still going through it. I mean, it's a lifelong thing, right?
It is,
But
and I swear, like, no, like, it doesn't stop. Like, I don't think it stops, right? Like, we have to get through this, like, we're constantly now from this point forward, like, we're in ascension mode, and that's up to the top until we start descending, right? And that takes thousands and thousands of years. And so, no, the awakenings never stop.
Mhm.
Like, the intensity of the pain might not be so bad, but the awakenings and the new insights and the
Mhm.
epiphany, that's not supposed to stop. So often, the world that we've seen is like, get to a level and then stay stable. No, go up.
Yeah.
Keep moving. Keep
That is
learning, keep growing, reach for the sun.
yes. Yes. I love that. Because I think that's exactly what happened to me. It was like that issue of there's a ceiling. This is where you reach success and you're happy and all that, and it didn't. I was like, I was miserable. So, yeah, there's so much more than that. And so, I'm happy that, there are people like you that are here to help others with that because it's a lonely, lonely process. And I think the more that we can build community and have help through it, honestly, makes it a lot easier.
Yes.
Um,
Can I make a shameless plug?
yes, absolutely.
Okay. So, like, I have my website and I have my coaching offers and I have all of that, right? But I realized, like, I've been calling people in and I didn't really have anywhere for them to go. And so I am currently in the process of launching that exact thing. And it's a community and it'll be free on Circle and it's going to be called The Fire. So it's like, come to the fire. Right. And it's for
Totally
anybody
fair.
at any stage of awakening, the people who have been through it, who are willing to support others going through it, those who feel absolutely isolated and alone in awakening, because it can be, it's so isolating. And that's what made me think of it, is that you look around you and you're like, is anybody else having this experience? Is anyone else seeing what I'm seeing? And like,
Yep.
so often the answer is no, right? And we
Mhm.
have to find each other like in little pockets online, right? And so I'm creating the space for that, and it's going to be on Circle and it'll be free. And we'll just have spaces where, we can come together and we can meet those who are on the same path as us and we can exchange those stories and help each other grow and help each other cope. So, yeah.
Yes. Amazing. Yes. Thank you for sharing that, and I'll be there too. So,
Hey.
well, I'll be sure to link that. But if anybody wanted to reach out to you, work with you, how would they find you?
Yep. So my website is thefire.unleashed.com. And there are links on there, how to work with me, how to join the movement, how to contribute. I have tons of stuff in the works because ultimately this is not a business. This is a movement, and it's a movement to gather the people and actually get us to the point where we start building what's new. Everything old, that's out. Like, we're done with that stuff, the systemized structures, they're collapsing, they're falling. That's what's sparking awakenings, right? And so it's our job as we the people to build what's next. It's not going to be these talking heads and upper echelon people who are bringing in what's new. It's you and me, and so I want to connect those people. Yeah, so the website, we do coaching. I offer the process of what I went through to really hone in on what my purpose was by combining astrology, human design, and numerology to just really create a profile of what somebody coded themselves for in
Hmm.
this life. If they want that, I also talk about how to do that on your own. I just happen to be really good at pulling out patterns
Hmm.
and recognizing things, so I offer that. And then, yeah, all the info is on there. So I would just say, just go to thefireuunleashed.com, and I'm on TikTok and YouTube, also The Fire Unleashed. So pretty easy to find. I don't know that Google's picked me up yet because all of this is still pretty new, but
Good. Oh, that'll come with time.
Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you, Candace. If there is any one last thing that you wanted to leave with the audience, whether that's a tip, whether that's some insights, what would you share?
Hmm. So, you know what? It would be this. We didn't really talk about Pluto and Aquarius, right? That started in November of 2024, where it really
Hmm.
came in and it's going to be there for the next 20 years. No one is escaping the fire. in the next 20 years. And the fire is transformation. It's what burns off the impurities and makes us gold.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so nobody is going to be escaping that process. And so my number one piece of advice is, well, one, don't do it alone. Really, like, some people have to, and that's okay. You know what? If that's what happens, then that's what was meant to happen. But ultimately, the one piece, if I only had one, it would be to be gentle with yourself. Don't beat yourself up for not being further along than you think you should be. Don't compare yourself to others and say, oh, well, this person is so much further along than I am, and I don't have that perspective, and I should have that perspective. Take the word should out of your vocabulary. You're exactly where you're supposed to be at exactly the moment that you were meant to be here. And so just self-care, self-compassion. The whole point of this is not moving the world forward. It's just for you to return to yourself, right? And so that means being present with yourself, be it in joy, be it in pain, be it in watching the sunset or eating dinner. Just be with yourself. Yeah. And so self-gentleness and not comparing and not being like, damn, I really wish I was further along. Like, we all wish that at some point, but when we're not, what's going to make it easier is just accepting.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that just by being gentle with yourself and really just coming back to yourself, you actually are furthering along the world. So,
Exactly. Like, you end up getting, we all want to kind of like be outside of ourselves. And like, before, I wanted to heal others and thought that I would find my healing in that. I didn't. I found it alone in the dark, dealing with the nitty gritty, shitty parts.
yes. And yeah, so, if anyone else listening out there is going through this, know that you're not alone. We're all walking a different path, but a similar path in a sense too. And there are resources out there for you. So if you like Candace, like what she has to say, I'll link all her information in the show notes. But Candace, thank you so much for being here with me today. I love this conversation, and I'm excited to see what the fire brings.
Thank you so much. No, this is awesome.